The ship landed on the alien world with a heavy sound of metal and dust. The ground was cracked, the air dry, and the sky had a strange red glow. Long ago, this world was alive with green fields and tall rivers. Now it was broken after years of war. Ethan stepped out of the ship, his boots pressed into the dry soil, leaving sharp marks. He was a trader, not the kind of trader who sold food or clothes. His job was darker. He was sent by his human company to deal in lives, to sell beings who had lost everything, to make profit from pain. Ethan did not like this job, but he did it anyway. For years he told himself, this is survival, this is just business. But deep in his heart, he knew it was wrong. On this mission, his order was simple: sell an alien widow and her child. The building where the aliens were kept was old and broken. The walls carried marks of fire. Soldiers stood at the doors with weapons, watching every move. Ethan walked inside. The smell of smoke and dirt filled the air. In the dark corner of the room, he saw them, the widow and her daughter. The widow was thin. Her skin was pale blue, her eyes large and bright, filled with both fear and strength. She wore simple clothes that had been torn many times. Beside her stood her daughter, a small girl with wide, curious eyes. She was holding her mother's hand tightly, as if letting go meant falling into a dark pit. The commander spoke, his voice cold. "These two are ready. Sign the papers, trader. Deliver them to the market tomorrow." Ethan nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the pair. The widow looked at him with silent anger, but also sadness. The child, maybe 6 or 7 years old, looked up at Ethan with innocent fear. Her lips moved, whispering something in her own alien tongue. Ethan did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was asking, "Are we safe?" For the first time in years, Ethan's hands shook as he took out the papers. He sat at a table. The pen hovered over the line where his name should go. His mind told him, "Do it. Just sign. This is your job. Take the money. Walk away." But something inside fought against it. His eyes went back to the girl. Her eyes were too pure for this cruel world. In them, he saw something he thought he had lost: hope. The widow held her daughter close. Her voice was soft but strong. "If you must take me, but spare the child." Ethan froze. His pen dropped on the table. His heart beat faster. No one had ever spoken like that to him. Most begged, most cried, but this woman stood with pride, ready to sacrifice herself for her daughter. The commander frowned. "What are you waiting for? Sign!" Ethan bent his head. His hand moved slowly, signing the papers, but his thoughts were burning. He was signing, yes, but something inside had already changed. When he finished, he looked once more at the widow and the girl. The girl's eyes met his. For a moment, it was like time stopped. She tilted her head and whispered one single word in broken human speech. "Uncle?" Ethan's chest tightened. His breath caught. That one word cut deeper than any blade. She had called him uncle. Not monster, not enemy, not traitor. She had seen him as family, even if only by mistake. The commander laughed harshly. "Ha! She thinks you are her protector. How foolish." But Ethan did not laugh. He looked down at the paper, then at the little girl again. His heart whispered, "Maybe I could be. Maybe I should be." That night, he sat alone in his quarters on the ship. The papers were ready to send. His company would be pleased. Tomorrow, the widow and her daughter would be taken away. Ethan stared at the papers, then at the stars outside the window. The silence was heavy. His thoughts fought inside him. He remembered his own family on Earth, long gone. He had no wife, no children. He had no one. The company gave him money, but money had never filled the emptiness. And now for the first time he felt something strange, a bond, a pull, the widow's courage, the child's innocent trust. It was like they had already stepped into the space that had been empty inside him for years. The communicator buzzed. The commander's voice came through. "Trader Ethan, delivery is tomorrow morning. Do not fail. The company is watching." Ethan turned it off without answering. His eyes stayed on the stars. His heart was no longer the same. Tomorrow he was supposed to sell them, but deep inside, a fire had started. A dangerous thought. What if I don't sell them? What if I protect them? The idea was madness. It could cost him his life. It could make him a traitor to his own kind. But the girl's voice echoed in his mind again. "Uncle." Ethan closed his eyes. His fists clenched. The morning came with a heavy silence. The alien sky was dark, painted with shades of red and gray. Ethan stood outside the storage building where the widow and her daughter were kept. The papers in his hand felt heavier than stone. He had signed them yesterday, but his heart refused to accept the meaning behind the ink. Inside, the widow sat close to her daughter. She held the child as if the world might tear her away at any moment. The girl's eyes lit up when she saw Ethan enter, as though he were not a traitor, but something else, something safer. Ethan's boots echoed on the stone floor. He lowered his voice so the guards outside could not hear. "Do you understand what is happening?" he asked the widow. Her alien accent was sharp, but her words were clear. "Yes, you will take us away. You will sell us like broken things." The girl clung to her mother's arm. Ethan looked at her small face and shook his head slowly. "No, not if I can help it." The widow frowned, confused. Her people had learned not to trust humans, yet something in Ethan's eyes was different. He was as struggling, but he was not cruel. That night, when the guards slept, Ethan returned. He carried food and a blanket. The widow did not reach for them. Instead, she stared at him with suspicion. "Why are you here?" she asked. Ethan placed the food near her. "Because I don't want to see you starve before tomorrow. Eat. For your child." The little girl took the bread with tiny hands, biting carefully, as if it were treasure. Ethan watched her chew, and a strange warmth spread through his chest. He had seen hundreds of starving beings before, but never had he cared. This time, he did. The widow spoke again. "My husband. He died fighting beside your kind." Ethan's head lifted sharply. "What?" She nodded, her eyes filled with both pain and pride. "He was a soldier in the last war. He saved human lives, but he never returned to me. They said he was brave. They said he was loyal, and yet, here I am, treated like dirt." Her words struck Ethan like a blade. He sat back, silent. Shame washed over him. He remembered the war. He remembered the reports of alien allies who sacrificed everything. And now, this woman, the wife of one such hero, was about to be sold by his own hand. The girl touched Ethan's arm softly. "Uncle," she whispered again. The word burned in his ears. It wasn't just a mistake anymore. It was real. She had chosen him. Ethan spoke in a low, urgent voice. "Listen to me. Tomorrow, they will come for you. But I cannot let that happen. You don't belong in chains. Not after what your husband gave." The widow stared at him, her eyes narrowing. "Why should I trust you?" He leaned closer. "Because if I wanted only money, I would not be here now. I have nothing to gain by helping you. But maybe I have something to save." There was silence. The widow studied him, searching for lies. At last, she sighed. "If you truly mean this, then you are already in danger." "I know," Ethan said simply. The next day, Ethan sent a false message to his company. He reported that the delivery had been delayed due to illness. The commander growled at him through the communicator but agreed to wait. It was a dangerous move. If they discovered the truth, he would be hunted as a traitor. But Ethan no longer cared. That evening, he returned to the widow and the girl. He sat near them, speaking quietly. "What is her name?" he asked, pointing gently at the child. The widow's face softened. "Her name is Lyra." "Lyra," Ethan repeated, almost like a prayer. The girl giggled and hid her face. For the first time since he had met them, Ethan felt the shadow of a smile rise on his own lips. The widow lowered her eyes. "If you truly want to protect us, then you must know something. My husband left behind a secret the company would kill to possess." Ethan leaned in. "What secret?" She whispered. "Technology. Old technology from my people, hidden in the ruins. With it, we could fight back. With it, we could survive." Ethan's heart raced. This was bigger than saving 2 lives. This was about hope for an entire people. As the night grew colder, Ethan stayed longer. He listened to their stories. The widow spoke of her husband's bravery, of the battles he fought, of the promises he made. She spoke of Lyra's birth, the way her husband had held her with trembling hands, swearing to protect her always. Ethan felt something break inside him. A wall he had built for years was crumbling. He had always believed he was alone, that his life was nothing more than following orders and earning pay. But now, he felt part of something again. The widow's eyes softened as she looked at him. "Why do you care, human? Why risk your life for strangers?" Ethan hesitated. His voice was rough when he finally spoke. "Because once, I had a family. I lost them, and now, I see what I could never protect before." The widow said nothing, but for the first time her shoulders eased and her anger faded. She looked at Ethan not as an enemy, but as something closer to ally. As dawn approached, the sound of engines roared in the distance. Company scouts were searching. Time was running out. Ethan rose to his feet, his jaw tightened, his hands clenched. "It's time. We can't stay here anymore. If we want to survive, we must move, tonight." The widow stood, lifting Lyra into her arms. The girl smiled sleepily, her small hand reaching out to Ethan. He took it, feeling its warmth. And in that moment he knew. The company no longer owned him. His path had changed. He was no longer just a traitor. He was becoming something else, something dangerous, something like family. The company did not like waiting. By the third day, messages were coming faster. Ethan's communicator buzzed again and again. The commander's voice was sharp and angry. "Traitor Ethan, where is the delivery? Do not test our patience. The widow and her spawn are property. If you cannot handle this, others will." Ethan sat in his small cabin aboard the ship. The communicator flashed red, but he did not answer. Instead, he stared at the stars outside the window. They looked cold and distant, yet somehow free. He knew his lies would not hold much longer. Soon the company would send soldiers to collect the widow and the child themselves. Inside the storage room, the widow, her name was Celine, watched him with serious eyes. "They are coming, aren't they?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Yes, and if they find you here, we are finished." The little girl, Lyra, played quietly with a piece of cloth. She was too young to understand the weight of danger. She hummed a soft tune, her voice light, while Ethan and Celine spoke in whispers. That night, Ethan sat at his desk recording another false report. Delay due to disease outbreak, quarantine required. He sent the message, hoping to buy one more day. But when the response came, his stomach turned cold. "Traitor Ethan, your excuses are weak. Inspection team will arrive tomorrow morning. If you have failed, you will answer for it." He shut the communicator, his jaw tightening. Time had run out. Celine sensed it when he entered. "They know." "Yes," Ethan admitted. "Tomorrow soldiers will come. They will take you, and they will not care who you are or what you've lost." Celine's voice was calm, almost resigned. "Then let them. I have lived with chains before. I can endure again." But Ethan shook his head fiercely. "No, not this time." His voice hardened. "I won't let them take you. Not her. Not Lyra." The next hours passed in silence, broken only by the distant hum of machines. Ethan checked his weapons, an old plasma pistol, a combat knife. They were not enough against soldiers, but it was all he had. Celine watched him, her expression unreadable. "Why fight your own kind?" she asked softly. "You owe us nothing." Ethan looked at her, then at Lyra, who had fallen asleep with her head in her mother's lap. His voice was low, filled with something she had not heard before. "Because I have already lost everything once, and I refuse to lose again." Celine studied him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. Something in her eyes shifted, less suspicion, more trust. Morning arrived too quickly. The sound of engines broke the air. A small company shuttle landed near the compound. Dust filled the sky. Armed soldiers stepped out, helmets shining, weapons ready. Ethan stood at the doorway, blocking their path. The commander's voice barked from behind them. "Traitor Ethan, where are the aliens? Stand aside." Ethan's heart pounded, but he did not move. "There is no delivery today." The commander's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "You heard me," Ethan said, his voice steady. "They are not yours to take." The soldiers raised their weapons. The commander stepped forward, fury burning in his face. "Have you gone mad? Do you think you can defy the company?" Ethan's hand hovered over his pistol. "Try me." Inside, Celine pulled Lyra close, whispering to keep her calm. She could hear the shouting outside, the click of weapons being armed. Her heart raced, but for the first time in years she felt she was not alone. Ethan faced the soldiers. For a tense moment no one moved. The wind whistled through the broken walls. Dust swirled. The standoff stretched like a blade ready to snap. Then, the commander gave a cruel smile. "So be it. If you stand with them, you fall with them." He raised his hand. "Take him down." The first shot rang out. Ethan ducked behind the doorway, firing his pistol. Blue light sparked against metal armor. A soldier stumbled, but the others pressed forward. Plasma bolts burned through the air, striking walls, sending pieces of stone flying. Celine rushed to the corner with Lyra, shielding her with her body. She shouted to Ethan, "There is a back way! The old tunnels!" Ethan fired again, then sprinted inside. "Show me!" Celine grabbed Lyra and led him through a narrow passage behind the storage room. The walls were rough stone filled with cracks. The air was damp and cold. Behind them, the commander's voice roared, "Find them! Do not let them escape!" The tunnels twisted into darkness. Ethan's breath was heavy, his heart racing. His pistol was nearly empty. Celine led the way, moving quickly despite holding Lyra close. She knew the paths well. Her people had built them long before the war. At last, they reached an opening. The faint light of dawn spilled through. Trees and wild plants covered the exit. Ethan turned, hearing footsteps echo behind them. The soldiers were close. He looked at Celine. Take her. Run. Celine's eyes widened. What about you? Ethan smiled grimly. I'll hold them. Buy you time. Celine shook her head fiercely. No, you are not alone in this fight anymore. Together they pushed through the exit, the forest swallowing them. Branches cracked underfoot, shadows danced around them. The sounds of soldiers faded for a moment, but Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The company would not stop, not until they were captured, or dead. He looked at Celine and Lyra, their faces determined yet afraid. In that moment, Ethan understood something clearly. This was no longer just about a mission, no longer about money. It was about survival. It was about family. And he would fight to the very end to protect it. The forest was alive with sounds Ethan had never heard before. Strange insects hummed. Tall trees twisted toward the sky, their branches glowing faintly as if holding trapped fire. The air was thick and heavy with mist, and every step cracked leaves that looked black under the strange light. Celine guided them deeper. She moved quickly, her steps light and sure, even while carrying Lyra. Ethan followed, his weapon drawn, his eyes scanning every shadow. He had fought men and machines, but this wild land was different. Here, nature itself felt like a silent hunter, watching them. Behind them, the distant echo of shouts and engines carried through the wind. The company soldiers were searching. Ethan whispered, "How far do these tunnels go?" Celine pointed ahead. "There is an old village, hidden among the cliffs. My people built it before the war. It is broken now, but it can hide us." Ethan nodded, though worry pressed on his chest. "And if they find the trail?" Celine's eyes darkened. "Then we run again." As night fell, they reached a clearing. A broken stone wall lay half buried in roots, part of some forgotten settlement. Celine placed Lyra down and handed her a piece of dried fruit. The girl chewed slowly, too tired to speak. Ethan gathered sticks and lit a small fire. The flames flickered weakly, but enough to push back the cold. For the first time since their flight, silence surrounded them. Celine sat across from Ethan, her eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. "You risked your life for us," she said. "Why?" Ethan poked the fire with a stick. "Because I couldn't watch it happen again. I couldn't stand by and let someone lose their family. Not like I did." Celine tilted her head. "Your family?" Ethan's jaw tightened. He rarely spoke of it, but here in the broken forest the words spilled out. "A raid, years ago, pirates, my wife and my son, gone, and I wasn't there to stop it." His voice cracked slightly. "Since then, I told myself feelings don't matter, that survival is enough. But now," he looked at Lyra, who was sleeping against her mother's side. "Now I see what survival without love really means. It means nothing." Celine's gaze softened. She lowered her head, whispering, "Perhaps fate brought you here. Perhaps you were meant to find us." Suddenly, a sound broke the moment, a low growl. Ethan shot to his feet, weapon raised. From the shadows, a creature stepped forward. It was tall, its skin dark and rough like stone, its mouth lined with sharp teeth, its glowing eyes fixed on the fire. Lyra stirred and whimpered. Celine stood quickly, pulling her close. The beast hissed, circling. Ethan aimed, but Celine grabbed his arm. "No! Shooting will bring the soldiers!" "Then what?" Ethan growled. Celine whispered, "Stand still. Do not show fear." The creature sniffed the air, stepping closer. Ethan's heart pounded. His finger itched on the trigger, but he forced himself to stay still. Celine began to hum a soft tune, a melody in her alien tongue. Lyra joined, her small voice trembling but sweet. The creature tilted its head, curious. For a long moment, it listened. Then, with a final hiss, it turned and slipped back into the shadows. Ethan exhaled sharply, sweat dripping down his neck. "What was that?" Celine sat down again, her hand trembling slightly as she stroked Lyra's hair. "A guardian of the forest. They only attack those who show weakness or cruelty. You Ood strong. That saved us." Ethan shook his head, muttering, "This world is full of monsters." Celine met his eyes. "Yes, but not all of them are out here." The night grew colder. Ethan and Celine sat across the fire, watching each other carefully. A bond was forming, though neither fully admitted it. In the distance, searchlights cut through the mist. The company was still hunting. Ethan cursed under his breath. "We need to move at first light. They won't stop." Celine nodded. "Then we must use the ruins. My husband once told me about hidden chambers in the old village. Places even the company cannot find." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You think they're still safe?" "They were built to outlast war," Celine said firmly. At dawn, they continued their journey. The forest grew thicker, the path narrower. Lyra walked now, holding Ethan's hand. She skipped over roots, her laughter small but bright in the heavy silence. Ethan looked down at her, surprised at the warmth he felt. This little girl, who should have been his cargo, now held his hand as if he were truly her uncle. Celine noticed and smiled faintly. She trusts you, more than she trusts anyone else. Ethan swallowed hard. That scares me. Why? Celine asked. Because I don't want to fail her, not like I failed before. By noon, they reached the ruins of the old village. Broken towers leaned against cliffs, covered in vines. Crumbled homes stood half swallowed by earth. Yet despite the decay, the place held a strange beauty. Celine guided them into one of the larger ruins. She touched a wall, whispering in her language. With a soft sound, a hidden door slid open, revealing a dark passage. Ethan stared. Still working after all these years? Celine nodded. My people built things to last. They stepped inside. The passage led to a wide chamber beneath the earth. Old lights flickered weakly on the ceiling. It smelled of dust, but it was dry, safe. Lyra's eyes widened with wonder. It's like a secret home, she whispered. Ethan set down his pack. The first time since their escape, he allowed himself to breathe. At least for now, we're safe. But Celine shook her head. Safety is only an illusion. The company will not stop. They never stop. Ethan sat against the wall, staring at the dim lights above. Then we don't just hide. We fight. We find your husband's secret, and we use it. Celine studied him carefully. You would risk everything for us? Ethan looked at her and Lyra. His voice was quiet but certain. I already have. Outside, in the forest above, the company's scanners swept the ruins. The soldiers were close, very close. But in the hidden chamber below, a new plan was forming, not just to survive, but to fight back. The hidden chamber gave them one night of rest. But by morning, the air was heavy with danger. Ethan could feel it in his bones. He had learned long ago that silence before a storm was never safe. Celine sat with Lyra, brushing dust from the child's hair. Lyra smiled sleepily, unaware of the shadow that was closing in on them. Ethan paced near the door, listening. He thought he heard faint echoes in the tunnels above, metal boots striking stone. They're here, Ethan whispered. Celine's eyes sharpened. Already? Yes, the company must have tracked our trail. Lyra tugged Ethan's sleeve, her small voice trembling. Uncle? Will they take us? Ethan knelt, forcing a steady smile. Not if I can help it. The first blast shook the walls. Dust fell from the ceiling. A soldier's voice boomed through a speaker. Ethan, step aside. Hand over the aliens. Do this, and you may live. Ethan's jaw clenched. They'll never stop, will they? He muttered. Celine grabbed his arm. We cannot fight them head-on. We must escape deeper into the ruins. Another blast. The hidden door groaned, cracks spreading across the stone. Ethan lifted Lyra into his arms. Show me the way, Celine guided. Them through a narrow tunnel that twisted like a snake. The air grew colder, the walls dripping with moisture. Ethan could hear soldiers forcing their way into the chamber behind them. Their voices were closer now. Hurry, Celine urged. Lyra clung to Ethan's neck, her small heartbeat racing against his chest. Ethan tightened his grip. I've got you, he whispered. They reached an old stairway carved into the rock. It spiraled upward toward the surface. Ethan pushed them forward, his ears ringing with the sounds of pursuit. Boots stomping, weapons clattering. At the top, light spilled through cracks in the stone. Celine pushed aside a heavy slab, revealing the forest once again. They burst into the open. The wind hit their faces, carrying the smell of damp leaves and earth. Birds scattered from the trees as the family of three fled into the wild. The soldiers emerged minutes later, scanning the forest with glowing visors. Spread out, the commander barked. They won't get far. Ethan, Celine, and Lyra ran through the thick undergrowth. Branches whipped against their faces, roots threatened to trip them. Ethan's muscles burned, but he did not stop. Behind them, shouts grew louder. Plasma bolts tore through the trees, burning holes in the bark. Celine grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward a hidden path between two cliffs. This way! They squeezed through the gap just as soldiers reached the clearing behind them. The chase carried them into deeper forest where the ground sloped downward into a ravine. Strange glowing plants lit the path, their light pulsing like heartbeats. Ethan stumbled but kept running, holding Lyra tightly. A soldier appeared ahead, blocking the way. His rifle rose. Ethan dove behind a fallen log, rolling onto his knees. He fired once. The blast struck the soldier's armor, sending him crashing back. Go! Ethan shouted. Celine pulled Lyra along, sprinting across the ravine floor. Ethan followed, firing at shadows that moved above them on the cliffs. The air was filled with energy blasts, spying, arcs, and smoke. At last, they reached a river. The water roared, dark and fast, cutting through the forest. Celine's eyes widened. We must cross. Ethan looked at the rushing current. That water will tear us apart. Better than the soldiers' chains, Celine answered. The commander's voice echoed behind them. You cannot run forever. Ethan hesitated only a second. Then he lifted Lyra into his arms again. Hold on tight. Celine grabbed Ethan's arm, and together they plunged into the freezing current. The water swallowed them, dragging them down. Ethan kicked hard, fighting the pull of the river. Lyra's arms clung around his neck, her breath coming in gasps. Celine swam beside them, her strength surprising. She grabbed Ethan's sleeve, helping pull them toward the far bank. Behind them, soldiers fired from the cliffs, but the river's force carried the fugitives beyond their reach. At last, Ethan's feet struck solid ground. He pushed upward, coughing as he dragged himself and Lyra onto the bank. Celine followed, collapsing beside them. They lay in the mud, gasping, soaked to the bone. Lyra coughed, then laughed weakly. We made it! Ethan smiled despite the ache in his chest. Yes, we did. But the danger was not over. From the forest ahead came another sound, the low growl of more beasts, guardians of the wild. Their glowing eyes appeared between the trees, circling the exhausted fugitives. Celine pulled Lyra close, her voice steady. Stay behind me. Ethan rose slowly, weapon raised, though his hands trembled from exhaustion. We can't fight them and the soldiers both. Celine's eyes darted around, searching. Then she pointed to the cliffs. There, a cave. If we reach it, the beasts may not follow. The growls grew louder. Behind them, the sound of soldiers crashing through the forest returned. They were trapped between two hunters, the Company A and the Wild. Ethan looked at Celine and Lyra. His voice was firm, almost a promise. Stay close, no matter what. Together they ran again, stumbling through the mud toward the cave. Beasts snarled at their heels, soldiers' shouts echoed from behind. The forest became a storm of chaos, roaring water, snapping branches, glowing eyes, flashing weapons. Every step felt like the last. Every breath was a battle. But Ethan's grip never loosened on Lyra's hand. Celine never let go of his side. They were no longer strangers running from fate. They were a family, fighting for it. The cave was dark, its walls sharp like teeth. Ethan, Celine, and little Lyra huddled inside, dripping water from the river. Outside, the growls of forest beasts echoed, but slowly faded. The creatures stopped at the cave mouth, watching with glowing eyes. They did not enter. Celine whispered, They fear the temple ruins. This cave leads to it. My husband once spoke of this place. It is sacred. Ethan's flashlight cut through the dark. The passage stretched far, its floor smooth, as if carved by hands long ago. Strange markings glowed faintly on the walls. Lyra touched one with her tiny fingers. Pretty lights, she whispered. Celine's eyes softened. Not just lights, warnings. This temple was built to guard something. Ethan kept moving, pistol ready. Whatever it is, we need it now. Hours passed as they followed the winding tunnels. Finally, the passage opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling stretched high above, painted with stars that shimmered like the real sky. In the center stood a stone altar, cracked but powerful. Around it lay shattered machines, half buried in dust. Celine knelt at the altar, her voice trembling. This is it, the technology my husband spoke of, a weapon, or a shield, a gift from my ancestors. Ethan circled the altar, studying the broken machines. Can it still work? Celine brushed dust from an ancient panel. Strange symbols glowed to life, pulsing faintly. If I can remember the words of my husband, maybe, before. Ethan could answer. A rumble shook the chamber. The sound of footsteps echoed down the tunnel. The company had found them. The commander's voice carried like thunder. Ethan, there is no escape. Surrender now and we may grant you mercy. Ethan pulled Lyra behind him, raising his pistol. Mercy? I've seen your mercy. Celine stood at the altar, chanting softly in her tongue. Symbols lit brighter, the ground trembling underfoot. Energy hummed through the air. The soldiers stormed into the chamber, rifles ready. The commander's eyes locked on Ethan. You chose wrong, traitor. Ethan's hand tightened on his weapon. No, for the first time I chose right. The first shots rang out. Blue plasma bolts struck the stone floor. Sparks rained across the chamber. Ethan returned fire, diving behind a broken pillar. Celine kept chanting, her voice rising. Lyra crouched near her, wide-eyed but silent. The commander barked orders. Soldiers fanned out, surrounding them. Kill the traitor, take the aliens alive. Ethan fired again, dropping one soldier, but more kept coming. His pistol hissed, power cells nearly empty. Celine, he shouted, how much longer? Her eyes glowed with reflected light from the altar. Almost there, hold them. Ethan gritted his teeth. He darted from cover, grabbing a fallen rifle from a soldier he'd dropped. Plasma fire blazed, echoing like thunder inside the temple. The commander charged forward, blade drawn, eyes burning with fury. He met Ethan in the center of the chamber. Their weapons clashed, plasma blade against steel knife. Sparks flew. You could have lived like a king, the commander hissed. Instead, you throw it away for these animals. Ethan blocked another strike, sweat pouring down his face. They're more human than you'll ever be. The commander snarled and pushed Ethan back. His blade cut across Ethan's arm, leaving a burny, numb wound. Ethan staggered but refused to fall. Behind them, Celine cried out the final words of her chant. The altar roared with light. A wave of energy burst through. The chamber. Soldiers stumbled, weapons flickering. The walls shook as ancient machines awoke for the first time in centuries. Blue shields rose around the altar, protecting Celine and Lyra. The commander turned, shocked. What have you done? Celine's voice echoed, strong and clear. You cannot break us. My people's strength lives on. Ethan seized the moment. He lunged at the commander, driving his knife into his side. The commander roared, striking back with his blade, cutting deep into Ethan's shoulder. Ethan fell to one knee, blood soaking his shirt. His vision blurred. Celine rushed to him, but the shield held her back. Ethan! Ethan looked at her through the glow, his breath ragged. Take her and run. Celine shook her head, tears burning her eyes. No, we fight together. The commander staggered, clutching his wound. His fury burned hotter than pain. This isn't over. The company will never stop. Celine stood tall, her hand glowing with the energy of the altar. Then let them come. We are not afraid anymore. The ancient machines unleashed a final burst of light. Soldiers screamed as their weapons melted in their hands. The commander stumbled back, blinded by the brilliance. Ethan forced himself to stand, every muscle screaming. With one last push of strength, he drove the commander back toward the collapsing edge of the chamber. The ground cracked. The commander slipped, his roar echoing as he fell into the abyss below. Silence followed. The remaining soldiers fled in fear. The chamber quieted. The glow of the altar dimmed, leaving only the flicker of dying lights. Celine rushed to Ethan, catching him as he collapsed. Blood stained her hands. Lyra cried softly, pressing her small hand to his cheek. Uncle, don't go. Ethan's eyes fluttered open. He looked at them both, the widow who had shown him courage, the child who had given him hope. And his voice was weak but steady. I'm not going anywhere, he whispered. Not as long as you need me. Celine held him close, her tears falling onto his face. Then you are one of us now. Outside, the first light of dawn touched the ruins. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something he thought was lost. Not survival, not duty, family. And he would fight anyone, even his own kind, to protect it. The temple chamber lay in silence. Broken stones smoked from the blasts, and ancient machines flickered faintly before shutting down again. The company soldiers were gone, scattered by fear. The commander had fallen into the abyss, his voice lost forever. Ethan sat against the cracked altar, his body weak, blood seeping through his shoulder. Celine pressed cloth against his wound, her hands steady, though her eyes were wet with worry. Lyra clung to his other side, whispering again and again, Uncle, you're safe now. You're safe. Ethan managed a weak smile. I told you, I'm not leaving. Celine's voice was soft, yet carried the strength of stone. You nearly gave your life for us. That makes you more than just a protector. It makes you family. For a moment, Ethan said nothing. He only looked at them, the widow who had once been a stranger, and the girl who had once been a job. Now, they were everything. The following days were quiet, but not peaceful. Ethan knew the company would return. Men like the commander did not work alone. A message had surely gone out before his fall. More soldiers, more ships. Eventually they would come. Still, he stayed in the ruins with Celine and Lyra, helping them rebuild a small camp. Celine knew the hidden passages of the temple, and with her guidance, they found safe corners and storerooms still untouched by time. At night, they sat around small fires, speaking in whispers. Lyra laughed more now, her fear replaced with light. He braided flowers into Celine's hair, and once even into Ethan's. He had grumbled, but secretly, he had liked it. One evening, as the stars shone through the broken ceiling of the temple, Celine asked him quietly, What will you do now? You cannot return to your company. They will mark you as traitor. Ethan looked at the stars for a long moment. Then I don't return. I stay. Here. With you. With her. If the company wants to come, let them. They'll have to fight me first. Celine studied him, her expression unreadable. Then she gave the smallest of smiles. Then perhaps fate was kind after all. But fate was not finished testing them. One morning, the low growl of engines rumbled across the forest sky. Ethan and Celine climbed to the edge of the ruins and saw it, another ship descending, larger than before. Its shadow spread across the land like a storm. Celine's breath caught. They've returned. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Let them. We're ready. He turned to Celine. The altar, that energy, it scared them before. Can you use it again? Celine shook her head. Not the same way. The altar is drained. It gave us one chance, nothing more. After that, we stand with only our courage. Ethan tightened his grip on his rifle. Then courage will have to be enough. The soldiers landed, marching through the forest toward the ruins. But this time, they did not find frightened prey. Ethan stood at the entrance, Celine at his side, Lyra watching from the shadows of the stones. The commander was gone, but a new officer stepped forward. His armor shone under the alien sun. Ethan, he called, you defied the company. You stole property. This is your last chance. Hand them over. Ethan raised his weapon, his voice carried clear and steady. They are not property. They are my family, and if you want them, you'll have to go through me. The officer sneered. So be it. The soldiers advanced, but this battle was not like before. Ethan had prepared. He had studied the ruins, learned their traps with Celine's help. As soldiers entered, hidden floors collapsed beneath them, dropping them into pits. Stone walls slid shut, cutting others off. Ethan fired from cover, striking with precision. Celine threw shards of energy crystals she had collected, their light bursting in flashes that blinded their enemies. The soldiers shouted in confusion, stumbling through the chaos. At the edge of the ruins, Lyra lifted her small hands and began to sing the same melody Celine had sung in the forest to calm the beast. Her voice was thin, trembling, but powerful. The strange creatures in the trees stirred, answering her call. Glowing eyes appeared from the shadows, guardians of the forest. This time they did not walk away. They surrounded the ruins, their growls filling the air. Soldiers froze, terror spreading through their ranks. The officer's face turned pale. Call them off or they'll tear you apart too. Celine's voice rang like steel. They do not serve us, they serve balance, and you broke it when you came here. The guardians lunged. Soldiers screamed as the beast crashed through their lines. Ethan fought alongside them, his rifle blazing. Celine moved with fire in her eyes, striking down those who tried to reach Lyra. The officer tried to flee, but Ethan caught him at the steps of the temple. He pressed the rifle to his chest. Tell your company, Ethan growled, that this world is no longer theirs to take, and if they try again, they'll face me. The officer staggered back, eyes wide before scrambling to his ship. The soldiers who survived followed, retreating in chaos. Silence returned. The beasts faded into the forest. The ruins stood tall once more, bathed in the light of victory. Ethan lowered his weapon, breathing hard. His body ached, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. Celine came to his side, her hand brushing his arm. It is over, for now. Lyra ran to him, hugging his leg tightly. We won, Uncle. We won. Ethan knelt, holding her close. His voice was rough but filled with warmth. Yes, little one, we did. That night, under the stars, they sat together at the altar. The fire burned bright. Ethan looked at them, Celine strong and proud, Lyra smiling with innocent joy. He had been sent here to sell them, to break them. Instead, they had given him back his soul. Celine's voice was quiet but filled with certainty. We are family now, not by blood but by choice. Ethan nodded, his eyes shone with a new fire. And I will never let anyone take you from me. Above them, the stars stretched endless, carrying the promise of tomorrow. A tomorrow no longer filled with chains, but with hope. For the first time in his life, Ethan believed in a future worth fighting for. A new family, a new beginning, a new world.